Good morning, everyone. Today's Thursday, April 15th, 2021. We sure have had a very busy week and a great start to April. I have spoken to many of our teachers, and they have been telling me about all of the great things virtual students have been doing since they got back from vacation. People are energized and ready to work. I love it. I am so proud to hear how you've all adapted to virtual learning. You really are role models for everybody else on how well you're doing with this. So way to go. Don't forget, do your best, be kind, and learn something new today. Our joke of the day today: why couldn't the flower ride a bike? Why couldn't the flower ride the bike? I wonder what the answer is to that one. I think when you hear it, you're going to laugh. All right, our upcoming events. I know I've said this every day this week, but the South Glens Falls Marathon Dance is going to be April 30th. South Glens Falls students and teachers will have a superintendent's conference day on that day. So just make sure you mark your calendars. This week in my s'more that I send home to families, I will also have a link if you would like to donate to the marathon dance. We would greatly appreciate that. Don't forget to take a look at our shout outs today. As always, we have two great ones, and please remember to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Today, I am going to read from Everything on It from Shel Silverstein, and I'm going to read a long poem, and it's called Growing Down. So instead of growing up, this person's growing down. Let's hear what it's about. Mix a grunt and a grumble, a sneer and a frown, and what do you have? Why, old Mr. Brown, the crabbiest man in our whole darn town. We all called him Grown-Up Brown for years. Each girl and boy and pup heard grow up, oh, grow up. He'd say, why don't you be polite? Why must you shout and fuss and fight? Why can't you keep dirt off your clothes? Why can't you remember to wipe your nose? Why must you always make such noise? Why don't you pick up your toys? Why do you hate to wash your hands? Why are your shoes all filled with sand? Why must you shout when I'm laying down? Why don't you grow up? Grumped Grow Up Brown. So one day we said to Grow Up Brown, hey, why don't you try growing down? Why don't you crawl on your knees? Why don't you try climbing trees? Why don't you bang on a tin can drum? Why don't you chew some bubble gum? Why don't you play kick the can? Why don't you not wash your hands? Why don't you join the baseball team? Why don't you jump and yell and scream? Why don't you try skipping stones? Why don't you eat ice cream cones? Why don't you feel? Why don't you cry when you feel sad? Why don't you cuddle with your dad? Why don't you have weenie roasts? Why don't you believe in ghosts? Why don't you have pillow fights? Why don't you sleep with a teddy bear at night? Why don't you swing from the monkey bars? Why don't you wish on falling stars? Why don't you run in three-legged races? Why don't you make weirdy faces? Why don't you smile, Grown-Up Brown? Why don't you try growing down? Then, Grown-Up Brown, he scrunched and frowned. He scratched his head and walked around, and finally he said with a helpless sound, maybe I will try growing down. So Grown-Up Brown began to sing and started to do silly things. He started making weirdy faces and came in first in three-legged races. All day he swung from monkey bars. All night he lie and count the stars. He tooted horns and banged on drums. He spent $20 on bubble gum. He went to all the weenie roasts, and once he thought he saw a ghost. He got to be great at pillow fights and went to sleep with his teddy at night. He flew a kite, he kicked a can, he rubbed some dirt upon his hands. He drew some pictures, threw some stones, ate 47 ice cream cones. He got some sand between his toes, got a loose tooth and a bloody nose. He got a dog, they rolled in mud. He imitated Elmer Fudd. He climbed a roof, though no one asked. He broke his wrist, he wore a cast. He rolled down hills, he climbed up trees, he scuffed his elbows, skinned his knees. He tried to join the baseball team, and when they said no, he spit and screamed. He cried when he was feeling sad and went and cuddled with his dad. He wore a hat that didn't fit. He learned how far he could spit. He learned to wrestle and get tickled, sucked his thumb, he belched and giggled. He got his trousers torn and stained. He ran out barefoot in the rain, shouting to all the folks in town, it's much more fun to be growing down. Woo, that was a long poem. There's no pictures to that one, so I hope you had a good imagination going and pictured everything in your head as I read. Everybody have a wonderful Thursday. I will be back here tomorrow morning to say hello to Friday and the weekend. See you all tomorrow. Have a great day.